We're halfway through the week. Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee in Seoul. Let's get started with a look at today's highlights. The government is set to resume construction of the Singgori 5 and 6 nuclear reactors, but says it still plans to speed up its nuclear phase-out policy. Global equities, including those here in Korea, have been hitting new highs in recent trading sessions. But what's behind the rally and how long will it continue? We'll sit down with an expert to talk about this. But first, Koreans looking to buy homes will find it harder to take out bank loans starting from next year. The government is set to enforce new debt-to-income ratio requirements on mortgage loans as part of its housing market regulations introduced back in June and August. As a result, the Financial Supervisory Service estimates the amount of new loans per borrower will decrease by 32.4%, or about $38,000. The financial watchdog also predicted that the rate of increase in Korea's total mortgage loans will also fall by about 2 percentage points. The measures have been introduced to curb property market speculation, especially among owners of multiple homes, while tackling the country's mounting household debt burden. Korea's total household debt stood at roughly $1.2 trillion at the end of June, up over 10% from a year earlier. The government is going to restart construction of 2 new nuclear power plants following a public opinion survey in which the majority of Koreans were in favor of doing so. Now, although the Moon administration will build the 2 reactors, there are still plans in place for making Korea a nuclear-free country in the long run. Our Lee Jung-yeon has more.
Korea's energy ministry said Tuesday it will resume the construction of 2 nuclear reactors after 60% of participants of a public survey were in favor of the project. But the ministry said it will cancel plans to build 6 new nuclear reactors in line with President Moon's goal to gradually phase out nuclear power.
We will not extend the lifespan of old nuclear reactors. We will push for an early closure of the Wolsong No. 1 reactor due to safety concerns and gradually shut down the number of nuclear reactors in the country from 24 in 2017 to 14 by 2038.
To ensure safety of the nuclear reactors, the ministry said it will ramp up monitoring of the reactor's operation and expand investment to ensure their safety in the case of strong earthquakes. The 2 nuclear reactors, Singgori 5 and 6, were about 30% complete before their construction was suspended in July. The ministry said it will consult with the Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power Corporation and its contractors to confirm the level and scope of compensation for the project as it plans to resume construction. Currently, Korea's 24 nuclear reactors provide around 1/3 of the country's electricity needs. To allay concerns of energy shortages, the minister said,
We will increase the proportion of renewable energy from 7% of the country's total power generation to 20% by 2030.
Along with plans to expand solar power and wind power for energy generation, the ministry vowed to found a nuclear decommissioning research institute to boost the development of technology to safely dismantle nuclear reactors. Lee Jung-yeon, Business Daily.
The main focus today of the ongoing government audit at the National Assembly is on the soon-to-be resumed construction of the 2 new nuclear reactors and the country's overheated property market. Lawmakers are visiting the Singgori 5 and 6 reactors in the southeastern city of Ulsan to review the temporary suspension. Rival parties are likely to trade barbs over the government's latest announcement of its nuclear-free energy roadmap. They're also reviewing government policies aimed at cooling Korea's overheated property market. The first government audit under the Moon administration will be running through the end of this month. And President Moon Jae-in hosted his first Blue House dinner with leaders of the country's labor unions on Tuesday. The goal was to create harmony between the government and labor so that the 2 sides can work together in making better job-related policy decisions. Here's our Moon Gun-young with more.
It was beer and finger food with the nation's corporate tycoons and it's prestigious blooming tea and healthy cuisine for the labor leaders of this country. President Moon Jae-in hosted a Blue House dinner for officials from the nation's various labor organizations on Tuesday, where he vowed to keep laborers in the loop when making key government policies.
우선은 노동계와 정부 사이의 국정의 파트너로서의 관계, 이것을 다시 복원하는 게 아주 중요하고 또 시급한 그런 과제라고 생각합니다. 오늘 이 만남은 그렇게 노정이 국정의 파트너로서 관계를 회복하는.
Pointing out that the working class have been neglected and excluded from policy making by the government in the last decade, the Liberal president who came into office on an election pledge to create a society where labor is respected reaffirmed his determination that he'll make good on his promise.
노동이 존중받는 세상 역시 대통령과 정부 의지만 갖고 되는 것은 아니고 우리 노동계가 함께 주셔야만 해낼 수 있는 일이고 또 노동계가 함께 주시면 훨씬 많이 해낼 수 있다고 생각합니다.
The meeting, the first of its kind since Mr. Moon took office in May, follows a similar gathering with South Korea's corporate tycoons in July, after which the president said he would also meet with the labor sector to listen in on what they thought of his latest labor reform policies, such as converting contract workers into full-time staff and cutting working hours.
In response to the president, the leader of the Federation of Korean Trade Unions said through social dialogue he hopes the labor sector and the government can together solve not only labor-related issues but other issues as well, such as housing, education and social security net.
But despite the president's intent to spur discussions with both umbrella labor unions, industry-specific and independent labor organizations, the smaller but more progressive umbrella organization, the Korea Confederation of Trade Unions, boycotted the event, citing its earlier demand to include representatives from all KCTU members for the Blue House dinner. Moon Geon-young, Business Daily.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has been given a second five-year term as the country's leader, cementing his grip on power by not appointing a clear successor. 5 new appointments were made to the Chinese Communist Party's 7-member Politburo Standing Committee, its most powerful decision-making body. Recent Chinese leaders have traditionally nominated one or more possible heirs to the Standing Committee, indicating a clear line of succession. Now, the notable absence of Xi's key protégés on the committee have raised a speculation over his long-term plans. Moving on to our coverage of the markets, we have our markets contributor, Jemmy Kim, joining us on the line. Hello, Jemmy.
Hello.
All right, so tell us how local stocks performed on this Wednesday.
Well, for the past month, the main KOSPI index has been flirting with the 2,500-point level, but it is not quite there yet. Today, the KOSPI closed 0.08% higher to finish at another record high of 2,492.5 points. The main index did retreat a bit in midday trading as institutional investors unleashed sell orders. Foreign buying pushed it back into positive territory. The KOSPI has rallied over 20% in the past 2 weeks alone. The tech-heavy KOSDAQ, meanwhile, ended 0.28% higher at 689.14 points.
Now, could you give us a more detailed breakdown of the market action?
Well, on the whole, financials and manufacturing stocks, including cosmetics, were on the rise today. Samsung Life rose 4.71%, while POSCO was up 2.28%, and Samsung C&T gained 1.38%. Communication stocks also ended in positive territory, with market heavyweight SK Telecom rising 1.52%. The number one market cap, Samsung Electronics, however, was down 0.26% on profit-taking, and Hyundai Motor was also lower by 1.66% as sales continued to suffer overseas.
So what market events do we have lined up for the remainder of this week?
Well, today the UK will announce its preliminary GDP figures for the third quarter. The US will release its own Q3 figures on Friday. Tomorrow, initial job claims also in the US are to be released, while in Europe, the ECB will issue its monetary policy statement. From Japan, the National Consumer Price Index for September is due as well. This is Jemmy Kim for Business Daily.
The stock market rally that drove U.S. stocks to hit fresh highs seems to be lifting equities all across the world, including here in Korea. For more on this, we have global strategist Daniel Yu from Kium Securities joining us in the studio. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me today.
All right, so Korean stocks have been hitting record highs recently. Now, in your opinion, how long do you think this rally will last?
Right. If you want to answer that question, you have to understand Korean economy. If you look at the Korean economy, about 35% of the overall corporate earnings come from the overall market comes from the IT sector. And right now we are at IT super cycle. And also the Korean economy, if you look at import-export total volume and numbers, it is over 100% of GDP. So as long as global economy continues to be okay and the IT supercycle continues, then the equity market should go up. So having said that, I think the earliest time that market might peak could be the end of first half of next year. If the semiconductor cycle-wise, there's supply numbers coming through in the second half, and that results into price decline, then earnings growth could diminish, and therefore market could peak. But that's an assumption. Right now, we are seeing continuation of earnings growth of the Korean companies, and that results into the equity market rise. Even looking into 2018, we're looking into two-digit growth number of earnings. If that's the case, then equity market should go up further. So we expect KOSPI index to break 2,600 by end of this year. Next year, probably another 10% or so. So around 2,800 to 2,900 could be the peak.
Okay, well, now along with Korean stocks, global equities are also breaking record after record. So if major central banks around the world start to tighten their monetary policies, how would that affect the current ongoing stocks rally?
Right. If you look at the Fed rate hike, that will result into money supply decline. Yet also, if you look at interest rate, it goes up, then that's definitely negative impact for the equity market. And we already know U.S. Fed will raise interest rate on December, and probably next year another 3 times. So 25 basis point each to 75 basis points rise in next year. If it goes as expected, then equity market should be okay. But if the speed and the rise of the interest rate is much faster than expected, then that should have a negative impact. What we're saying is that if the economy is growing and earnings growth exceeds that of interest rate hike, then equity market should continue to go up. But if the bubble goes to a much bigger size, that the Fed and central banks need to raise interest rate faster, that could be an issue. What Fed will look into will be the inflation numbers. Luckily, we're seeing continuation of inflation coming at timid number. The reason for that is because, number one, oil price remains to be quite timid at $50 plus or so, which is much lower than the previous peaks. And you are seeing a non-branch sales portion of the overall sales, the retail sales, rising very rapidly because of the Amazon and other online companies. And that reduces the inflation. So as long as inflation remains to be low, then the rate hike should be at very slow speed. And if that continues, then equity market should continue to go up.
All right. Now, you mentioned U.S. Fed, but also we have the European Central Bank's monetary policy coming up on Thursday, and the U.S. Fed's monetary policy coming up. So what are some of the things that we should keep a close eye on those upcoming meetings?
Right. What's the most important thing is what we already know versus what we didn't expect, right? So we are expecting already one-time rate hike, and also by Fed, and also we are expecting balance sheet declining. If any indication that shows that the speed is going to accelerate, that could be a problem. Or the level of the balance sheet reduction is becoming much bigger than expected, that could be a problem. So we got to watch out how fast that will be. Also, ECB is continuing to do right now quantitative easing. And they have said that they will reduce the level of quantitative easing, QEs. So let's watch out for how fast they will reduce that size. So overall, I think that the central bank is not necessarily positive for the equity markets, but nevertheless, if they continue to do a very slow speed of reduction of liquidity in the market, that should not be a problem.
So it's the pace that really matters.
Exactly.
All right. Well, and now over in Japan, Japanese equities led regional gains on Monday after a landslide election victory of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's ruling party. Now, how would this affect sentiments?
Right. I mean, sentiment is great right now. Japanese equity markets have risen to record high level. Now, if you have to understand the Abenomics. Abenomics have been quite successful in terms of economic parts of it. You are seeing continuation of property price rise. You are seeing a very low unemployment ratios. We have seen a consumption pickup and also economic growth recovering to 2% level. Inflation's coming at a little bit slow speed at 0.5%, but that's overall global economic case. Now, having said that, Abenomics was successful. Nevertheless, Abe was not really having a very tough time on political stands. But because of North Korea situation, they have won this election. So what's important is that they need to continue to have a very strong economy. If you don't have a strong economy, you will lose that power, right? So having said that, they will have continuation of very supportive fiscal and monetary policies going forward. If that continues, then the corporate earnings of the Japanese should go up closer to these growth numbers, which have shown already this year and maybe even to next year. So we have to watch how aggressive this fiscal and monetary policy will change. Right now, it's very supportive, and it should continue to remain supportive due to the political situation.
So I guess from what you're saying, we should see this global stocks rally continue, at least for the time being.
Yes, at least next 6 months to 12 months, at least.
All right. Thank you so much for your insight today.
Thank you for having me today.
According to the Bank of Korea, the country's export volume index rose for the 11th consecutive month to 162.7. That's up 19.8% from a year earlier and the biggest rise in 5.5 years. The volume index reflects changes in the value of Korean exports, with 100 representing the base year of 2010. The previous record was set in February of 2012 when the index rose 22.2%. The deputy head of the BOK said this year's strong exports have been led by demand for electronics and electronic components, and the index for those goods rose 16% thanks to semiconductor sales and high memory chip prices. A disappointing report card from one of Korea's biggest display makers, as LG Display said its Q3 operating profits dipped more than 27% on quarter. Its profits in the July to September period was seen at $518.7 million as its bottom line suffered on falling panel prices. LG Display sales rose to some $6 billion, up nearly 4% compared to the same period last year. Looking ahead, the company says it's optimistic that seasonal demand will pick up, but remains concerned that prices will continue to trend downward. LG Display added that it will continue to expand its OLED business and aim to improve its overall profitability. The fierce rivalry between tech heavyweights Samsung and LG has come to a head once again. And our Eunice Kim has more on the tug of war that's playing out in front of the public eye.
Samsung's latest entry into the premium TV market features what it says are quantum dots. Powering its QLED TVs, they are tens of thousands of times smaller than a strand of hair, exuding next-level clarity and brightness. LG's freshest 2 boasts an even thinner screen with OLED pixels that emit their own light for an improved sharpness and viewing experience. That's where the niceties end. Recently, Samsung Electronics launched a marketing offensive by way of a YouTube clip, pitting its QLED against LG's OLED TV. In a side-by-side comparison, it claimed the OLED left an after image over longer viewing periods, while its QLED did not. LG called it slanderous advertising. Samsung stood by its video, insisting such juxtapositions was a widely used marketing strategy across the world. Later, it issued a statement claiming OLEDs are not suitable for TV displays, period. The fight over picture quality has spilled over into a debate on market share. Citing a study by IHS Markit, LG pointed to its double-digit lead on Samsung on TVs costing $2,500 or more in both the first and second quarters of this year. Samsung dismissed it by saying the survey was based on distributor figures. Instead, it pushed forward GfK and NPD stats, which it said were based on consumers, naturally showing the tech giant at a comfortable lead with a market share of 33 to 35%.
We anticipate the upward trend to continue into the end of the year.
With not just the Christmas gifting season, but also the Pyeongchang Winter Games just around the corner, competition between the two tech heavyweights is expected to heat up even further.
They'll try to capitalize on the unique situation and expand the reach of their products in the 2 years between the Winter and Summer Olympic Games.
Ultimately, it will be up to the consumer to decide which of the two, LG or Samsung, will be crowned the winner, in the premium large-screen market increasingly claiming a larger piece of the general TV revenue pie. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
Korea remains on course for a record-breaking low in new childbirths, with the country's birth rate continuing to decline at double digits in August. According to Statistics Korea, 30,200 children were born in August, plunging 10.9% on year. The figure has now declined for the 9th consecutive month, and overall numbers for 2017 is expected at around 360,000, over 10% lower than last year's record low. The low birth rate, coupled with an aging population, could prove costly for Asia's fourth largest economy and could undermine Korea's future growth. Prime Minister Lee Nak-yeon has assured Olympic Committee heads that Korea is making a full effort to make the Pyeongchang Winter Games a perfect Olympics. Lee met with Olympic Committee leaders from the U.S., China, Japan, and France in Greece on Tuesday and called for their full support to ensure the Games are safe and peaceful. IOC President Thomas Bach said he's making every effort to have North Korea participate in the Winter Olympics as well. Prime Minister Lee also asked the U.S. Olympic Committee chair for help in getting U.S. President Donald Trump to visit Korea for the Games. Asiana Airlines has given a temporary waiver by the United States on new screening measures that are being applied to all U.S.-bound passengers. Korea's second biggest air carrier says Washington accepted its request to delay the implementation of tightened security checks. In June, the U.S. Transportation Security Administration asked 180 airlines in 105 countries to conduct pre-flight screening and interviews of passengers headed for the U.S. Those measures are due to kick in on Thursday, but Washington has given Asiana a 6-month grace period until April of next year in consideration of its ongoing relocation to a new terminal at Incheon International Airport. The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia announced his country's plan to build a new megacity on the shores of the Red Sea that's about 44 times the size of Seoul. The $500 billion project is part of efforts to free the kingdom of its heavy reliance on oil exports. Our Elliot Kim has this report.
Named NEOM, the ambitious project would create a business and industrial zone extending across Saudi borders into Jordan and Egypt. The 26,500 square kilometer area will focus on industries including energy and water, biotechnology, food, advanced manufacturing, and entertainment. Prince Mohammed bin Salman says NEOM will operate independently from the existing governmental framework, with investors consulted at every step during development. The project will be backed by more than $500 billion from the Saudi government, its sovereign wealth fund, as well as local and international investors. In a rare appearance on Tuesday at an international business conference, the 32-year-old prince hailed the plan as an example of the innovative, high-tech future he has promised his country.
We have a chance to move on to the next generation in the way of life, in the cities, in the technology, in health and technology. So we worked with many companies and investors to work on this demand and work on moving the world to the next phase.
He also pledged to defeat extremist ideas and help young Saudis live in a modernized kingdom that promotes moderate Islam.
70% of the Saudi people are less than 30 years old, and quite frankly, we will not waste 30 years of our lives in dealing with extremist ideas. We will destroy them today.
Although there are reports of a number of potential investors, the sheer scale of financial and technical resources needed for NEOM will prove to be a big challenge. Elliot Kim, Business Daily.
And that wraps it up for today. But we'll be back tomorrow with more of the day's top business stories, so don't forget to tune in then. Thanks for watching, and see you soon.